Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this afternoon's trade review session. So hopefully you can see the screens. I've got two screens back at home today, so hopefully you can see those. Obviously this is the first week that we've moved the trade into Vantage, so there have been a couple of issues, and I'll go through those with you today because I don't want you making the same mistakes that I seem to be making this week. The first thing obviously is the indices trade with a decimal point, I've often found myself this week when I'm looking at it with the decimal point having to be very, very clear the exact level that I'm trading. Being used to just looking at futures prices and trading the futures prices for a very long period of time, it does take a bit of getting used to looking at the cash, so hopefully that's okay. But as you'll have seen today, and I've mentioned this every time that it's happened, there was a gold trade a little while ago at 1803.91, I think it was. That trade was oversized, so I'd just like to encourage you all to make sure that you look at the trade sizes up in the boxes. I often use one-click trade, or I pretty much always use one-click trading, so the sizes are in the boxes already. They're already pre-populated, and there seems to be something that happens, and I can't exactly work out what it is at this moment, but I'm going to do some testing afterwards when the gold size, which I've got there on the screens as you can see at 0.1, it changes back to a full lot. So there's a couple of trades that I've placed today that have been oversized, which means that I've had to incorporate the first thing, I suppose, if you do find yourself where you oversize a trade, the loss will be far more significant than you're used to straight away. The general rule of thumb is that your first cut is the best cut, first loss is the best loss, whichever way you want to look at that. With my trading mentality, it's not necessarily always the way that I approach it. I tend to put a fairly tight stop in and try to allow the trade to recover. Now I've done this a couple of times today, so I would be, I just want to make it very clear that please check your trade sizes, because there is a slight anomaly and I'm not sure exactly what it is. I trade at different times of the day. I might be trading on my phone. Sometimes I'm trading off of the screens. So I'm gonna play around a little bit with it after this particular session and after the opening bell. And try to get a complete answer as to why it happens. But the easiest way, and you may find this a bit easier than me, because I'm older and used to doing things the way that I do them. But please always check your trade size, especially if you're using the one-click trading, especially if you're using the increased levels of leverage that we see with Vantage as well, because it may allow you to get a particularly big oversized trade on. I don't want that to happen to anybody. So the Q&A box is open. I have two screens, so I'll be able to see those as they come in rather than waiting for Sam to send them through. I don't have any Dow positions on at the moment. I did put a big trade above the market a little while ago. We are again approaching fairly, or we're very close to the highs that we've seen in the Dow over the last period. I'll just bring the Dow up onto the screen in a bit more detail. So trading there just above 35,600. I think the order that I put in was somewhere above 30 or fairly close to 35,750. The worry when I see a market like this trading at new highs is that you're going to get a certain amount of spoofing, number one, and there is the potential for a short squeeze, people getting short this market, or the question that you could ask yourself is everybody already long this market? So just if there was a short squeeze, if there was a bit of stop, or there were some stops that were triggering at the opening bell, I just wanted to try and catch that, so I was looking for a really sharp movement to the upside with a combination of all of those three really. The spoofing, the potential for spoofing, potential for a bit of a short squeeze, and the potential for stops to come into this market. So any time that we're trading around these new record high levels, the potential for stops to be triggered is obviously heightened, and you might see some, fairly significant knee-jerk movements around those particular times. So I'll come back to the Dow in a minute. I'm just going to cancel that order. I'm going to try to cancel that order if I press the right buttons. So I'm just going to cancel that order. I don't want it hanging out there, potentially for me to forget it. We'll come back to the Dow in a few minutes and just look at that as we trade around it. Gold has fallen away, thankfully, to about 1803 and change at the moment. The DAX, which has been reasonably volatile throughout the day and caught me completely out this morning at first and was very close to stopping myself out. I have stopped out some of my positions since then, but it's trading off a little bit in line with the Dow, possibly looking for a bit of a weaker start to the session than we might have been expecting 10 to 20 minutes ago. So the Dow still hovering around 35,597, 35,600, and it will be interesting to see what happens in that first 5 to 8 minutes of trading. Again, I'm going to expect it to be extremely volatile. I would imagine we're going to see at least a couple of decent movements. Whether those happen as we expect or not is going to be seen. But for the time being, I'm not going to have an order running in prior to the opening bell, which is unusual for me. I think I want to see how that first couple of minutes pans out. Potentially significant movement up to the upside that would allow me the opportunity to short into that. Obviously, the further that we shoot up, the further we can get our stops away from this market. And I really don't see, and some of you may disagree with me, which is perfectly okay, but I really don't see the catalyst for a significant move higher. Yes, the big technology companies are going to report over the course of the next week, but I think we're waiting for those more than anything, and I think potentially, sideways movement with potential for a bit of a movement lower is probably more likely. So we'll just open back up the Dow. We're 30 to 40 seconds away from the opening bell, and we're trading there just below that 35,600 level still. So we've got it open there. Just flick back, see what the other markets are doing. There's a little bit of a pick up in the DAX. Gold still around that 1804 level. But we'll just go back to the Dow and see if we can pick anything out in this early part of the movement that we want to get involved in. So I'm just going to reduce this down to a minute screen, which will show us those movements as we're open now. And we're kind of, there's not a great deal going through, just back above that 605, 608 level, trading there and keeping fairly steady around those levels. I think if we pop up to 650, I'd probably be interested to short the market around those levels. May even look for something a bit higher, but it's a fairly fairly quiet open for the Dow. We're not seeing a great deal of movement in those first few minutes, and again, I think it's not apathy, but I think it's just some of the confusion that we see there out in the market at this particular point as to where we go from this particular level. So we'll go back to the Dow and just monitor that for the next couple of minutes. 605, 604. Again, you look at that last candlestick, which is a minute candlestick, and the range has been from about 589 up to 614. A bit more buying coming in. around 630 now. I think if we get up and just touch above that 650 level, I'm going to be interested there. I might just have a couple of issues there with the internet we're coming through. I'm just going to put a limit order in there at 660, and we can just come back to that and see whether that triggers. So we're still around the 630, 635 level. Definitely buyers outpacing the sellers at the moment, but not a great deal of movement, not a great deal to sell into. And like I say, I don't have a Dow position at this particular point, so we'll just watch and see how that continues over the next period. Gold popped up a little bit there to 1805, 1805 and 3/4, and the DAX, as you would imagine, or as you would think, in line with that slight positive movement in the Dow, has pushed to the upside as well. Dow still around the 630, 640 level. So I don't see any questions coming through. I do encourage you to send those through if you can. If there's anything that you would like me to talk about during this particular session, or any questions that you would like me to answer, as long as we try and avoid why so there we go, the trade is triggered. So we're short the Dow just below 35, or I'm short the Dow just below 34,660. We have seen a pickup, probably only 2 minutes into trading, so still a lot of those opening orders coming through that have seen a movement back to the upside. So we'll just see how this plays out over the next period. It's not running away too aggressively. We're about 10 pips against at the moment, 15. And you would imagine, or just looking at the movements in the market, it's not as if we're seeing too many stocks coming through, and we're trading back to the level that we entered at, that I entered at. And just gone slightly below. So I'm going to leave that for the time being. Look back over at some of the trades of the week. Gold obviously back up just above 1806. So there we have the trades for the week so far. Delwar Matin, do you see gold holding 1800 and above now, or more downside? I think 1805 is a key level, Delwar. Whether or not it can hold that level, obviously I have a trade that says it can't, and that's my immediate perception of where we're going. A lot of strength already today. Early this morning it was trading at 1782. We're well above 1800 now, and if the momentum starts to build in gold, there is the potential obviously for it to go higher. My own opinion is that we will struggle here around 1805, and hopefully will reverse from the levels that we're currently seeing. As we know, only time will tell. So I'll just open up the screens again, and we'll just go back to the trades. So we're just about at the same level that we traded with Dow, so we're about 5 or 6 minutes into the day now. So there's not any real significant movement to the upside, or not yet. I'd like to see this market tip down, back down to 35,600. So I'm just going to put a TP in there. It's going to be a good way away. I think the potential for a fairly decent movement downward is there. So I've just put that in about 35,608. And we'll monitor that over the remainder of this session. It's picking up a little bit again, up to 682, but I'm just not seeing the momentum coming through from those stops, or a short squeeze, and it may well be that people will turn and still start to sell and potentially push this market lower, or hopefully push this market lower. So just in terms of the week so far, and there's a little bit of updating to go on this, it's going to be reasonably flat, unfortunately. Monday and Tuesday, again, very, very good, as it's been over the last couple of weeks, and unfortunately I'm getting into a situation where from Wednesday on, start to get a little bit too exposed too early, so I'm going to have to address that over the next period. And then today, unfortunately, a couple of trades in there from today are going to see a fairly substantial hit, and are probably going to erode is the word I was looking for, erode any of the profits that I've seen so far. So look, I'll continue to monitor this during the course of the afternoon. And then I will revert with, I think there'll be limited trading. I think I'll just monitor and unwind what I have. Been far too many occasions this week where I've carried positions overnight, carried those potentially for a day, day and a half, and I would like to start next week flat and looking to trade with a clean sheet of paper every single day. So as I'm leaving you here, the Dow is just under that 35,700 level. You know, if this reminds me of anything back to the pits many years ago, is that we'll be continuing trying to trade new prices, see if there are any stocks there, and this looks fairly similar. So hopefully we see a reversal from these levels. There's a TP in there, and I'll look to stop that trade out if we do start to rally aggressively from these levels. Thank you very much for joining me, and I shall speak to you via Telegram again this afternoon. Excuse me.